The prison's top dog used to scare the hell out of everyone, until a rookie kung fu master took him down right in front of the whole block. Nobody had ever laid a hand on Brick and lived to tell the story. That's the line that spread like wildfire the night everything changed inside Stonevale State Penitentiary. In the deadliest wing of the joint, silence hung thick over the concrete halls. Inmates crowded behind the bars, all watching without a word. Even the hardest hitters pressed their arms tight to their sides, like maybe staying invisible could save them from what was about to go down. Down the middle of the corridor, barefoot and slow like a predator on the hunt, walked Brick King Maddox. A tattoo-covered giant, every inch of him a record of violence, blood, and power. His body was a weapon, his stare a death sentence, and in that moment, there was only one way this could end: a fight. For years, Brick had ruled those walls like his own personal kingdom. He decided who ate, who got beat down, who slept where. The guards knew it and let it ride. Brick wasn't just another inmate. He was the guy who kept order by making everyone fear him. But that afternoon, something shifted. Somebody broke the unspoken code. Somebody dared to look the king in the eye and not bow. That somebody was the new guy, Jin Tae Kim. Assault charge, quiet, disciplined, kept to himself. From day one, he didn't fit the mold. He didn't talk much, but the way he moved, it was sharp, deliberate, like his whole life had been one long training session. Their first clash wasn't with fists, but with eyes. In the chow hall, Brick pulled his usual move, stared him down, waiting for the rookie to flinch. Jin Tae didn't blink, didn't look away. He just kept eating like Brick was just another face in a room full of ghosts. To the rest of the inmates, that was a death wish. To Brick, an insult. To Jin Tae, just the beginning. And now Brick was storming down the tier toward his cell, and everybody knew what that meant. No words, no forgiveness, only blood. But there was something in Jin Tae's eyes nobody could figure out. Calm, cold, like he'd been waiting for this moment, like he already knew exactly how it would play out. Who was this rookie? Why wasn't he scared? And the real question, the one everyone was too afraid to say out loud, what happens when the king of the prison finally meets someone who doesn't want his throne, but can take it anyway? Stonevale wasn't just a prison, it was a war zone dressed up as a correctional facility. Sitting on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas, the place had a reputation that rattled even the most seasoned cons. It held men society wanted to forget, and some it wished it could. The place was split into 4 main blocks, but D Block, that was hell on earth, home of the lifers, the repeat offenders, the gang leaders. And at the top of that brutal pyramid stood Brick Maddox, former underground fighter, tied to drugs and extortion, doing time for gunning down 2 federal agents during a raid on his ranch. Inside Stonevale, he'd built a silent empire. The name King wasn't given, it was earned, carved out in blood and fear. Brick called the shots on cigarette trades, contraband routes, sometimes even internal death sentences. The guards feared him more than they hated him. He was the one who cooled riots when the staff couldn't. In return, he got invisible perks, scraps of outside intel, unspoken privileges, and the luxury of guards looking the other way when he handled business. Brick never had to do much. A walk down the hall, a glance, that was enough. Then came Jin Tae Kim. Born in Oakland to Korean immigrant parents, Jin Tae grew up on the line between tradition and survival. His father ran a small kung fu school in the back of their house, teaching not just how to fight, but the values behind it: patience, honor, precision. Jin Tae never wanted violence, but he learned it. From childhood, his body was trained to master balance, defense, the art of using the least force for the greatest impact. At 35, his life flipped when he made headlines, caught on camera taking down 5 armed robbers in under 2 minutes at a diner where he was grabbing coffee with his sister. Nobody died, but the footage went viral, and in Texas, the system didn't play fair. An ambitious DA, some missing cooperation, and next thing he knew, Jin-tae was shackled and shipped off to Stonevale. He came in like everyone else, cuffed, numbered, processed. But it didn't take long before the rhythm of prison life noticed he wasn't just another body. Something about him was different. Stonevale wasn't built to rehabilitate. It was built to grind out whatever scraps of humanity you had left. The concrete was old and porous. The ceiling fans groaned louder than they cooled. Inside, time didn't pass. It piled up, sticking to your skin like dust. To survive in Stonevale, you needed more than muscle. You had to read the invisible codes. Every hallway had an owner. Every cell was a territory. Every glance carried a message, and the ones who really enforced it weren't the guards, it was the inmates. After the silent showdown in the Chow Hall, Jin-tae Kim started drawing attention. Not as a hero. In Stonevale, heroes don't last long. He was watched with suspicion, eyes sharp and quiet. What really unsettled people was the way Jin-tae moved. No rush, no flexing, no need to prove a damn thing. His cell sat tucked away in the far corner of D Block, right next to the double gates that led to the yard. His days were monk-like, up before roll call, stretching and breathing drills in silence, then hours, sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, locked in a state that looked more spiritual than survival. The first one to break the ice was Logan Grease Harper, a career thief and hustler. Grease wasn't strong and sure as hell wasn't feared, but he knew how to get things: info, cigarettes, pills, favors. The kind of guy who survived by staying useful. "You picked the wrong dude to piss off, man," Grease said one morning, leaning against the bars while Jin-tae splashed water on his face at the steel sink. "Brick doesn't forget. He'll be back. And when he's back, it ain't to chat." Jin-tae just gave him a brief, steady look. Calm. Like he'd known this all along. Like he'd been waiting for it. Later in the yard, Brick's eyes scanned for the rookie. He didn't find him, because Jin-tae wasn't there. He was in the infirmary, quietly helping old man Dalton, the oldest con in D Block, stretch out a busted leg after a fall. Dalton was invisible to everyone else, but Jin-tae treated him like his own grandfather, and that started turning heads in ways nobody expected. That's when the whispers began. He fights like a killer, but lives like a monk. Meanwhile, Brick's silence was starting to crack his rep. His two closest boys, Tonka and Reyes, amped up the brutality in the halls, like they were trying to restore the fear Brick's quiet no longer commanded. But Brick, he didn't say a word. He was chewing on the insult. Or maybe just watching. The guards noticed too. Officer Raymond Hart, a veteran who'd seen more power shifts than he cared to count, felt the tension building. He knew vacuums in prison power meant blood. And the dead silence between Brick and Jin-tae, that was a warning siren. Hart studied Jin-tae with cold eyes. Something didn't add up. "This guy doesn't act like someone broken," Hart told the security captain in a closed-door meeting. "He acts like someone trained, like somebody who came in here prepared." The words hung in the air, written down, logged. That evening, Jin-tae returned to his cell and found a folded note on his bunk. No name, no sender. Just 3 words. "Don't forget why." It was the first time anyone had reached into his past since he'd been locked up. The handwriting was familiar, almost intimate, but impossible. Who the hell could have sent it? That's when it hit him. Jin-tae Kim wasn't here by chance. Somebody wanted him in Stonevale, and he wasn't here just to survive. He had a bigger purpose, one no one else knew. The next morning, the whole place felt different. The air tighter, the stairs shorter. Even the sounds, the clang of trays, the rattle of keys, the stomp of boots cut sharper, like Stonevale itself was holding its breath. Brick was nowhere. Not in the yard, not in the chow hall, not in the showers. For most, that was the worst sign. Brick was like a storm. If you didn't see him, it meant he was building. Jin-tae kept to his rhythm, training alone. Circular, fluid movements. calm as water. The inmates started giving him space, not out of fear, not yet, but because nobody knew where to place him. He wasn't gunning for allies, wasn't joining crews, didn't rise to bait. And in Stonevale, that broke a rule older than the walls. Nobody survives alone. But Jin-tae didn't look like he wanted to survive. He looked like he wanted something specific. It all boiled over on a muggy afternoon. In the prison library, a cramped cage where most guys came to escape, not to read, Jin-tae scanned the shelves for a copy of Tao Te Ching. Tonka, Brick's right-hand bruiser, strolled in with 2 backup goons. "Word is the monk's been getting too philosophical," Tonka sneered, stepping close. "Maybe it's time for a hands-on lesson." Jin-tae didn't answer, just pulled the book free, turned slowly and faced them. His stare wasn't defiant. It was neutral, almost detached. Tonka lunged first, only to freeze at the sound of the lock snapping shut. Officer Hart had locked the library door from the outside. "5 minutes," Hart said through the bars. "After that, I'm obligated to step in." It was a setup. Either Hart was testing Jin-tae or helping Brick reclaim control. Jin-tae closed his eyes for one breath. When they opened, his whole stance shifted. He moved, silent, precise, relentless. Tonka went crashing into a shelf with a spinning kick. The second guy dropped from a wrist lock that snapped like a whip, screaming before he blacked out. The third stumbled, panicked, tripped over himself trying to flee. 4 minutes, no killing, no shouting, just clean, surgical violence. When Hart unlocked the door, the 3 lay scattered. Jin-tae handed him the torn book. "It's ripped. Can I swap it?" Hart stared at him, unsettled. The man wasn't sweating, wasn't angry, just centered. "You're not trying to survive, are you?" Hart muttered. "You're here for something else." Jin-tae said nothing, just walked out. That night, Brick finally showed. He didn't speak, just stood across the yard, watching Jin-tae for long minutes. Some inmates backed away, others froze. Jin-tae kept flowing through his tai chi, calm, as if Brick wasn't even there. But he knew. The war wasn't being avoided, it was only taking shape. Behind the scenes, Stonevale's system flagged irregular activity on Jin-tae's intake record. His name appeared on 2 separate lists, one showing him transferred from Alameda County, another stamped with confidential judicial order. That contradiction pinged a federal officer in Austin. A protocol was opened, and somewhere deep in the system, that didn't sit well. The next morning, an envelope slid under Jin-tae's cell door. Inside, a single photo. A man with a scar across his throat, shackled inside a transport van. On the back, scrawled by hand, "He's here too. Block C." Jin-tae stared at it for a long time. His face stayed calm, but inside, gears locked into motion. The mission hadn't even started yet. That man, the one in the photo, was the real reason he was here. Brick was just a roadblock. The real target was still waiting. In the days following the ambush in the library, Stonevale's halls felt restless. Silence, once the badge of absolute control, had become fertile ground for whispers. Jin-tae Kim, the man no one knew, was now on everybody's lips, even in circles that never mixed. The Latinos respected him, even if they didn't understand where his discipline came from. The black gangs watched in silence, sensing in him a man who carried the weight of injustice. The Aryans hated him, but none dared cross his path. But underneath it all, nobody trusted him. And that worked in Jin-tae's favor. In the admin offices of Stonevale, records clerk Elliot Rourke scrolled through Jin-tae's intake file. Something was off. The system flagged him as court order, but the original doc was encrypted, unusual even for high-risk federal inmates. Rourke knew poking too deep was a quick way to disappear. Still, he'd seen the name Yong-soo Kim listed under Jin-tae's family ties. That name was tied to a federal investigation, one that had been abruptly buried 2 years ago. On impulse, Rourke printed it, folded it into his pocket, and walked out in silence. He didn't know his actions were already logged. Someone upstairs was watching. Meanwhile, in the prison infirmary, old man Dalton, the inmate Jin Tae had been helping, was becoming more than just a symbol of kindness. Dalton knew Stonevale's veins. Decades inside, once the right hand of a leader Brick Maddox had snuffed out back in the 2000s. During a monitored walk in the medical yard, Dalton leaned closer to Jin Tae. "That man in the photo," he muttered, eyes fixed on the guards. "He's the executioner from the special unit. Works for something called Project Cobalt. A dirty op the government buried, legalized psychological torture. And what's he doing here?" Jin Tae finally broke his silence. "Hiding. Under protection." Protection from who? Dalton tilted his head toward the sky, as if the concrete itself had ears. "From the same people who sent you here." For the first time, Jin Tae's calm cracked. With Brick Maddox absent from daily life, his lieutenants, Tonka and Reyes, were losing grip. Other crews were rising. D-Block had turned into wet gunpowder. All it needed was a spark. The power vacuum left room for men like Luis Rain Castillo, the Latino shot caller whose influence was spreading fast. Rain respected Jin Tae. More than once he pulled him aside. "They'll push you to move before you're ready. That's what they do to anyone who scares them." "And you?" Jin Tae asked. "I'm hoping you win, because if Brick falls and you don't take his place, this place turns to hell." Inside Stonevale, time dragged, but outside someone was pulling strings. At the federal courthouse in Austin, prosecutor Catherine Lenz picked up an anonymous call. Just one line. "If the name Yong-Soo Kim resurfaces, they'll try to bury it again, but this time they won't." The voice on the other end was female, cold, controlled. Back in his cell that night, Jin Tae stared again at the photo of the scarred man, the same face that appeared in old CIA reports stamped under extreme ethical testing. This wasn't just about honor anymore. This was about truths buried deep. And then, before dawn, Brick Maddox appeared at Jin Tae's cell. No crew, no witnesses, just him. And a single question. "You really what they're saying you are? Or just another ghost chasing justice?" Jin Tae stood. No rage, no pride. "I'm just the beginning." The next morning looked ordinary. Grey skies, bad food, distant shouts. Stonevale kept grinding through its toxic cycle, like time itself was cursed to repeat the same day forever. But that morning, the silence shattered. 3 heavy thuds echoed from the access hall to Block C. Not gunshots, something falling. Hard, violent, no alarms, no guards rushing in. And that made it even scarier. Out in the yard, a few inmates tilted their heads toward the noise. Then Tonka came stumbling through, blood pouring from his shoulder. He collapsed at the iron gate, eyes wide with terror. He's out of the cage!" The chaos that followed wasn't loud. It was quiet, which in Stonevale was worse. Guards moved in crooked patterns, orders whispered over radios, no shouts, no sirens, and suddenly every inmate was marched back to their cells. Emergency lockdown. Jin Tae was already sitting on his bunk when the door slammed shut. But this time, he smelled something off, not blood, not sweat, surgical alcohol. Rising to his feet, he found a syringe tucked under his food tray. Empty, fresh. The message was clear. Someone had been inside his cell, and it wasn't another prisoner. In the medical wing, 2 bodies turned up. Nurse Douglas, one of the only staff who ever spoke to Jin Tae, dead, neck snapped. And the second body? Unidentifiable. No face, no fingerprints. But the real horror, cell 09C was empty. The scarred man. The man from the photo, gone. Hours later, Brick Maddox was dragged off in cuffs to solitary. Official reason, insubordination. But the ones who saw him knew better. Brick had been beaten, and not by Jin Tae, by someone nobody recognized. It was an earthquake under Stonevale's foundations. If Brick, the so-called king of the prison, had been touched by an outside force, who really ran this place? That night, when the cells cracked open for shower rotation, the yard felt too empty. Jin-tae walked like always, calm, deliberate. But there was a new edge in his body language. Tactical alertness. Inside the showers, the lights flickered. Someone had cut the backup generator. Through the steam, a figure emerged. Tall, face half-shadowed, a tattoo on the neck, and the same scar as the photo. "I thought you'd come find me," the man rasped, voice shredded like every word was pain. "But you took your time. Not like you." Jin-tae's gaze locked on him. The air was thick with tension. "I had to be sure it was you," he said evenly. "Now you know. So what are you gonna do with that?" Without warning, the man lunged. His strikes weren't clean or disciplined. They were savage, animalistic. Jin-tae blocked, countered, and the two clashed like colliding storms, steam swirling around them like battlefield smoke. Mid-fight, the scarred man whispered something that froze Jin-tae for a split second. "Your father didn't die that night." The hesitation cost him. A brutal punch slammed Jin-tae to his knees. "He's here," the man growled, stepping closer. "But not how you remember. They broke him, Jin, used him to build monsters like me." Slowly, Jin-tae rose, fire in his eyes, not from pain, but from truth. "So that's it," he muttered. "This was never about me. It was about him." Before the scarred man could react, Jin-tae struck, precise, flawless, slamming him to the floor. Kneeling on his chest, Jin-tae clenched his breath, battling the urge to finish him then and there. "Where is he?" he shouted, losing control for the first time. "Block E," the man wheezed. "But if you go there, you won't come out alive." Up in the tower, Officer Hart watched through the security cams. He didn't intervene. "Let him see the truth," he whispered into his radio. "Only then will he understand this prison is just a mask." Far beyond Stonevale, a civilian chopper hovered with thermal scanners locked on the prison. Inside, a woman spoke into a phone, her tone flat and cold. "He knows. Activate Protocol Cobalt. Terminate in 72 hours if he breaches Zone E." Nothing would ever be the same again. Jin-tae Kim now understood. He wasn't here to take down Brick Maddox. He was here to bury the ghosts that made Brick and destroyed everything he loved. The next morning, Stonevale looked unrecognizable, routine suspended. Yards shut down, mess hall empty, guards patrolling with rifles rarely seen inside these walls. Orders had come from way above the usual chain of command. Protocol, Cobalt, Level 3, full movement restriction, 72-hour preventive lockdown, green light for lethal force on any breach. But what rattled the inmates wasn't the lockdown. It was the guards' silence, their empty stares, their refusal to answer questions. In D Block, Jin-tae sat in his cell, sweat rolling cold down his back. The fight with the scarred man had left bruises, but it was the revelation that tore him open. His father, alive. Not the kung fu master he remembered, but a broken shadow of himself, warped by a program the state pretended didn't exist. A living experiment. Proof that even the best could be twisted into weapons. Jin-tae skipped training, skipped food, skipped words. He only thought, calculated. He had to reach Block E. That meant crossing maximum security zones, armed checkpoints, subterranean wings where prisoners didn't exist on paper. That night, Old Man Dalton shuffled past, coughing, dragging his feet. He paused, casually slipped a folded sheet through Jin-tae's bars. On it, a charcoal-drawn map of Stonevale's skeleton, vent tunnels, service shafts, hidden chambers. Old, maybe outdated, but it was a start. At the bottom, one line, "Even kings must crawl to find the truth." The next day, Luis Rain Castillo tapped lightly on Jin-tae's bars. His voice was low, urgent, like every second was bugged. 3 of Brick's guys are gone. Reyes, Tonka, and another. No records, no transfers, just erased. Erased like dead, Jin-tae asked. No, like ghosts. People who never existed. Rain leaned in closer. Word is you fought the scarred man. Some say they've seen him before, in other prisons. Always right before riots, always vanishing without a trace. Jin-tae said nothing, but the truth sank deep. Stonevale was a cage inside a cage. In the guard's wing, Officer Hart got direct orders from superiors he didn't even know by name. Keep inmate 401B contained, no comms, 24/7 surveillance. But Hart had already made his choice. He flipped on the mic hidden under his shirt. Day 147. Protocol Cobalt is active. Inmate 401B Jin-tae Kim has been inserted with hidden objectives. Presence of Project Ether confirmed. I suspect the real mission was never about controlling this prison, but testing psychological warfare on a live system. He clicked it off, drew a long breath. He knew the clock was ticking. Helping Jin-tae was digging his own grave. That night, in his cell, Jin-tae did something he hadn't since arriving. He sat in full lotus, meditating. But he wasn't chasing peace, he was chasing control, clarity. He knew the days ahead were an abyss, physical, moral. And then, as if the universe answered, the prison lights flickered once, then died. Total blackout. In the corridor, the metallic slam of 3 doors opening rang out like an omen. Jin-tae rose. It was time. Darkness swallowed everything. For 7 full seconds, Stonevale sank into the void. No light, no sound, no control. Then the backup generators kicked in, weak and stuttering, flooding the halls with a pulsing red glow. Jin-tae Kim was already moving. With Mr. Dalton's map burned into memory, he slipped out through a hidden gap in the pipes behind his sink. The crawl space was narrow, wet, reeking of rust and stagnant air. But Jin-tae moved like he'd been training for this labyrinth his whole life. This wasn't just an escape, it was a passage. In Block B, a staged riot erupted, 3 inmates throwing a fake brawl to drag the guards off course. Meanwhile, the South Wing's surveillance feeds went mysteriously dark, cut by Elliot Rourke, the records tech. He knew he had hours at best before discovery, but that didn't matter anymore. He accessed a buried encrypted file, Project Ether. Inside, reports on Jin-tae Kim, Yong-soo Kim, and dozens of unregistered prisoners, men and women used in psychological warfare simulations inside the prison system. One file hit him like a hammer. Yong-soo Kim, captured 2003. Rehabilitated via MK-Null protocol. Status, functional. Location, Block E. Codename, The Whisperer. Meanwhile, Jin-tae pushed through abandoned sublevels. One crumbling wall carried a message scrawled in dried blood. He isn't him anymore. Deeper in, he found a hidden cell. Inside lay Tonka, or what was left of him. Shallow breaths, trembling body, hollow eyes. They took things out of my head, Tonka whispered. Made me see things that weren't there. I killed my brother. Thought he was you. Jin-tae crouched beside him. There were no words. The pain wasn't physical. It was the weight of being broken, rewired. Who did this? Jin-tae asked softly. The faceless man. The Whisperer. Cold shot down Jin-tae's spine. His father. Pressing on, he reached Block E's side access. 2 hooded operatives stood guard. Armed, uniformed, no insignia. One carried a stun baton, the other a silenced pistol. Jin-tae didn't hesitate. A spinning strike crushed the first man's throat. He disarmed the second, snapped his arm, and dropped him with his own weapon, silent, precise, deadly. Snatching an electronic keycard, he advanced into Block E. The air changed, sterile, freezing, padded walls, hidden cameras, no bars, only vault-like doors. At the end, one door glowed on its panel. Y.S. Kim, APT-403, high-risk OBS. He swiped the card. The lock hissed open. Inside, sitting cross-legged, was his father. Thin, shaved head. Scars etched across face and skull. Alive. Dad, Jin-tae breathed. Yong-soo Kim lifted his eyes, one heartbeat of silence. Then he rose with trained precision. Blank eyes, fighting stance. He didn't recognize his son. Jin-tae raised his hands in peace. He wouldn't fight him, not him. I came to get you out. But his father struck, automatic, mechanical, like a machine wired to kill. It wasn't combat, it was a test. Jin-tae could have dropped him, could have broken him, but he wouldn't. Instead, he dodged, deflected, speaking through each breath. Dad, it's me, Jin, your son. You taught me Kung Fu. Remember, the school behind the house, the tiger statue. For one flicker, Yong-soo hesitated. The opening. Jin-tae closed the distance, locking his arms around him. His father thrashed, fists swinging, still trained to harm. But Jin-tae held on. I came to end this. The program, the pain, all of it. And slowly, the old man's resistance broke. His fists dropped. Tears rolled, confused, uncomprehending, but human. In the control tower, alarms screamed. A unit had escaped Block E. 2 targets, 2 ghosts, father and son, alive again. The red alert bled through Stonevale, but no one knew what to believe. 2 phantoms had escaped a place no one left alive, and now they were inside the prison walls. Jin-tae and Yong-soo moved like shadows through the lower corridors, guided by Dalton's old map. The father wavered between lucidity and madness, but Jin-tae knew time was short. Words wouldn't save him. Action would. Across the prison in Block D, Luis Rain Castillo quietly rallied his men. They'd heard about the breakout. They knew who was involved. More importantly, they knew this was it. Rain closed his eyes, spoke low. When the system bleeds from the inside, you've got 2 choices. Pretend you don't see it, or stick your hand in the wound and become part of the cure. 5 men stood. A 6th hesitated, then rose. Their mission, spark a second riot, one big enough to blind the towers and free the South Zone for a few precious minutes. Meanwhile, Officer Hart was done hiding. He copied files, recorded logs, burned evidence. He knew he wouldn't survive this. He transmitted one message to Federal Prosecutor Catherine Lenz. Prisoner 401B has YS Kim. Protocol Cobalt active. Need outside extraction cover. Less than 1 hour. The reply was instant. We're coming. In the infirmary, Mr. Dalton made his final move. He yanked the backup generator offline in Block B, forcing guards to scramble power elsewhere. Before 2 ether operatives pinned him down, he stared into the ceiling camera and whispered, "Go, kid. Show them blood doesn't make monsters. Fear does." Jin-tae and his father reached a service hatch between blocks, but 3 armed operatives stood in the way. Jin-tae left his father in cover and unleashed a storm. Clean, brutal, final. 3 bodies dropped. Jin-tae barely broke a sweat. He returned, clasped his father's hand. "You remember me, don't you?" Yong-soo froze, then gripped back. Hard. No words. Enough. Above the prison, a helicopter closed in. Catherine Lenz and 2 federal agents inbound. But Protocol Cobalt had already unleashed a kill team. 2 snipers took position, rifles trained to erase any unauthorized escape. Time was bleeding out. At the extraction point, the maintenance rooftop above the kitchen vents, Officer Hart waited. His eyes red, uniform undone. "You're late. Had to talk to a few ghosts on the way," Jin-tae said flatly. Hart handed over 2 packs, one stuffed with files, the other with gear. "This is what's left of the truth, dossiers, recordings, the whole damn Project Ether." "And the way out?" Jin-tae asked. 15 minutes, if the chopper can land. "And if it can't?" Hart swallowed hard. "Then we fight till we drop." And then the prison shook. The Block D riot erupted. Rain and his crew hit the guards on cue. Simulated fires, kitchen gas blasts, all timed to perfection. On the upper levels, ether agents moved in. Orders clear. "Eliminate 401B. The old man is expendable." Jin-tae understood. This wasn't just escape. The next hour would decide if the system collapsed from within. The sky over Stonevale darkened fast, a slab of lead grey settling over the prison. On the maintenance roof, Jin Tae Kim gripped his father's hand like he was holding onto a life about to slip away. You could hear the federal chopper somewhere out there, but the sounds inside the prison were worse. Quick footsteps, boots on concrete, muffled shouts, weapons being racked. Time was up. Officer Hart, face blown across the internal cameras now, looked at Jin Tae with a calm born of desperation. "When they get here, there won't be any talking." "I know." Jin Tae tore the sleeve off his orange uniform and wrapped it around his fists. It was symbolic. It was war. Yong-Soo Kim, unsteady but upright, took his place at his son's side. His eyes weren't all the way back, but the body remembered. The old master, buried under years of torture and conditioning, still breathed. "We finish this together," Jin Tae said without looking back. And then they came. 7 men, black kit, no insignia. Kill team trained. Ether operatives swarmed the roof from both flanks. Suppressors, thermal sights, simple orders: neutralize the target, erase the mess. They weren't ready for what they ran into. The first shooter was stripped clean by a father-son combo. Jin Tae's low kick, Yong-Soo's rising elbow. The second took a knee to the gut, puked and dropped. The third managed a shot, caught Hart in the shoulder. Hart went down, yanked the operative close, and folded him with a temple punch. He hissed through his teeth, "That's for Dalton, you bastard!" 4 more ringed the Kims. It turned into a ballet of blunt force brutality. Jin Tae was precision and speed, every strike calculated to end a threat without a second thought. Yong-Soo, even wasted, slipped into his son's flow like backyard drills from a lifetime ago. 2 bodies moving as one, father and son, fighting not for the win, but for the truth. Above them, the helicopter drew in. "Visual confirmed," Catherine Lenz's voice cracked over the radio. 2 live targets on the roof, beginning extraction. Then another threat surfaced. On the control tower, a lone figure finished setting up a mounted gun, belt-fed, fixed sightline on the roof, the program's last card. "Gunner on the tower!" Hart shouted, crawling to the edge. Jin Tae saw it, knew there wasn't time. The helicopter was 50 seconds out. The gunner needed 10-0 his aim. He turned to his father. "Get behind the chiller box, stay low. And you? I finish what we started." He ran. He skimmed the roof's rim under grazing fire, spidering up the tower skin. A round ripped his leg, opened him up, but he didn't stop. Every step a scream, every leap a swallowed goodbye. He hit the platform like a meteor, slammed the gunner into the parapet. They fought, rolled. The gunner was strong. Jin Tae was faster. The weapon skittered over the edge and shattered below. Both men knew what came next. The gunner drew a knife. Jin Tae didn't back up. They collided like predators, but this time Jin Tae wasn't fighting with just a body. He brought everything he had clawed back from hell. One clean motion, disarm, pin, drive him into the wall. The knife clanged away. The gunner sagged, beaten but defiant. "Do it," he spat, blood on his teeth. "Nothing changes. We're replaceable." Jin Tae stared, picked up the knife, and hurled it into the dark. "That's what changes." He turned and stepped off the parapet, catching the steel line dangling from the helicopter. His father was already being winched up. Hart, bleeding, managed a wavering salute. And the last image Jin Tae saw before the lift yanked him skyward. Rain Castillo stepping onto the roof, giving a tired grin. "Go, brother, we'll hold the line." The chopper climbed. The tower blew seconds later in a final bid to erase the evidence. Too late. The files were out. The bodies were found. The truth was loose. 2 weeks later, Stonevale wasn't just a prison name, it was an international headline. The world saw the leaks. Sub-level cells with no official records. Prisoners used as test subjects in psychological experiments. Documents exposing Project Ether, funded by shadow budgets inside the government. Catherine Lenz, now heading a federal commission, laid unquestionable proof before the Senate. Generals, directors, politicians toppled in days. None of it would have happened without Jin Tae Kim. He didn't show for the hearing, no interviews, no docu-series. He vanished, like a ghost who finished the job and chose silence for his rest. At a clinic outside San Francisco, Yong-Soo Kim entered intensive rehab with full psych care. Some days he called his son the wrong name. Some days he didn't recognize his own face. But on the good days, he traced kung fu forms with surgical precision and smiled like time hadn't passed. On those days, Jin Tae appeared in the courtyard, quietly, watched his father for a few minutes, then faded back into shadow. Officer Hart, retired and under protection now, lives behind a new name. A letter showed up in his mailbox. Thanks for keeping your eyes open. JTK. Inside Stonevale, D-Block was shut for good. Rain Castillo, the last on-the-ground shot caller, got transferred and slipped off the radar. Rumor is he teaches meditation and self-defense at a juvenile facility in New Mexico. In the prison's place, something new went up. A restorative justice and rehab center. A name painted across the front, Yong-Soo School. The system tried to erase Jin Tae. He didn't choose revenge. He chose memory. And that's how he beat something no punch ever could. The invisible machine that turns people into monsters and monsters into tools. On a coastal town in South Korea, a small martial arts school opened quietly. No billboard, no hype. Just a wooden sign with a tiger, the same one from Jin Tae Kim's childhood yard. Every morning, a man there teaches kids to breathe before they fight and to listen before they act. Nobody knows his real name. But the old-timers swear his eyes carry the calm of someone who went through hell and decided never to go back. What makes a man walk through hell and return whole? Justice, vengeance, or the stubborn need to give meaning to what was taken from him? The prison bully ran the place until a rookie kung fu master beat him in front of everyone is more than an action hook. It's a reminder that real power isn't just strength. It's choosing how and why to use it. If this story hit you, share it. Talk about it, sit with it, because sometimes even silence can be a weapon.